Checking on the storm reports yesterday. We had some quarter-size hail reports out there in the Midwest. We could do that again today, right?
Yeah, so let's have a look at our...
Here's the fog. Jordan, New Orleans waking up to a dense fog advisory for the second straight day. Northbound lanes of Interstate 55 west of the city remains closed after a foggy pileup involving more than 150 cars and trucks. At least 7 people have been killed. New this morning, first responders are concerned they could find additional bodies as they work their way through the mangled wreckage. An exceptional drought in South Louisiana. That's a big factor feeding that swamp fire. Because of the fog, some New Orleans schools will delay the start of class times this morning. So yes, we have a deficit of like 26.5 inches in New Orleans, much of Louisiana dealing with the drought. And of course, it's been a hot summer as well. This is a look at what the satellites showed us yesterday with that fog the thickest during the morning hours. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, all the way through 9 o'clock. That's when we had the poorest visibilities out there along this section of I-55. You can see what the visibility was looking like, down to a quarter mile, down to 0 in some locations where you could barely see right in front of you, especially on those bridges that cross over the marsh and the water. So basically, we just talked about that super fog. You have that smoke mixed together with the fog, and that smoke is from that fire, the swamp fire, which is still burning out there. And just as you look at statistics here, when we're dealing with fog, more than 25,000 crashes per year, a lot of them injuring people, and even 464 deaths each year due to that thick fog. So for this morning, we still have a dense fog advisory in effect. I-55 North remains closed at I-10 right over this swamp fire. This is where we're dealing with the worst visibility this morning. We do have that dense fog advisory through 10 o'clock local time, and already we're starting to see those visibilities dip a little bit. Typically, Steph, they're going to be thick right until about 8 or 9 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, late this morning we'll start
again after that terrible more than 150 cars and trucks pile up yesterday morning. So we've got dense fog advisories in effect once again for all these parishes that are shaded in the yellow. Goes all the way through 10 o'clock Central Time, so that fog will be a bit stubborn in clearing up and mixing out by the time we get toward the afternoon. That will happen. But Houma, Louisiana on the map with quarter-mile visibility. New Orleans proper right at the airport, actually not too bad for now with 10-mile visibility, but you'll notice that there is some patchy dense fog elsewhere, even between these reporting stations. So we do have the advisory that stretches back into eastern Texas. Visibility pretty poor there as well, so you've got to use the low beams if you are going to be driving out there. That visibility could be down to a quarter mile or even 0 at times, just like we saw yesterday morning. It was just like driving into a wall of fog, and you could barely see anything in front of you. So we still have some issues this morning. Make sure you reduce the speed. Again, low beams is the way to go. You don't want the brights because that reflects back in your eyes. Here's a look at the rain that's happening too across the Red River Valley, northern Texas up towards Oklahoma City. It's pouring in some of these locations, but we do need the rain. We could do without the severe threat, and that's also on the map here. Portions of New Mexico, getting into western Texas. It's a marginal threat, but a threat nonetheless, where we could see some damaging winds to go along with the heavy rain and frequent lightning. Oklahoma City, it's a wet rush hour for you to start the day. It's going to be windy and rainy as we head out towards lunch break. And then for your evening rush, still wet weather here across the middle of Oklahoma. So, Jordan, it's a pain driving in the rain, but we do need it.
Yeah, and we actually
slow and steady. It's like a hard floor though, because it has been so dry in many areas of the southern plains all the way through the Midwest. There's also that chance we could get some severe storms with this system. This is our second severe season, being a transitional time of year in the fall. That can happen. So Steph just mentioned we got the remnants of Norma that's feeding in to the plain states, and therefore giving us the potential for some heavy rain as well as some strong storms. Now yesterday there was about a handful of reports of quarter-size hail, about 1 inch in diameter. So we'll have to watch out for that again today from Minneapolis to Green Bay. And you can see for tomorrow, it's a little bit more toward the south, including Omaha, Nebraska, over towards Des Moines, that 35 corridor. You could get pelted by some hailstones along with that heavy rain. So here's a look at the water vapor imagery showing that moisture really very well here in the northern parts of Wisconsin. This is where the worst of the weather has been this morning, with a lot of lightning strikes out there. Not seeing any severe warnings with this right now at this early hour, but certainly waking you up. This is your alarm clock this morning here in central Wisconsin. So we'll watch that batch of rain and thunderstorms move over the top end of Lake Michigan into the top end of I-75. Then you've got this rain that we'll have to monitor moving northward across the central and southern plains, reaching into KC by the time we get towards 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. There's Minneapolis around the Mall of America. We got those storms circling you guys, northern Wisconsin, Wausau, Rhinelander, over toward the Door Peninsula. We'll see some very heavy rain where we need it, but we'll have to watch those rainfall rates. And sometimes you get what's called training, where the storms hit the same areas over and over again, and that can lead to the flood threat between now and tomorrow morning. And then between tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday morning, it's quite possible we see flooding in this general area, including Minneapolis over towards Rhinelander. And then Thursday into Friday, that's right, this system is still with us. We have the threat for more flooding from Iowa all the way into the northern parts of Michigan, where it's been abnormally dry with that hot summer. Here's a look at our future radar. You can see the rain pushing through Chicago for your Wednesday start. By Wednesday at the end of the day, we see Minneapolis down towards Des Moines with the showers, the thunderstorms. Any one of them could have a severe warning on it. You could see a flood warning even going on at the same time. Through Thursday, we see that rain still heavy at times. That's why we have repeated flood threats over the next few days, because it's these same areas that will be dealing with the rain, and it's going to add up in the gauges, perhaps as much as 3 to 5 inches in some areas. So, Jordan, it's one of those situations where you have to be careful what you wish for, right? We want the rain, especially over the Mississippi Valley, where it all feeds into the river. You know?
That's really going to be so beneficial with how dry that thing's been. And the fact that we're getting...
Terrible things can happen, you know, in the car. We're going to talk more about that scorching car scale in just a second. But for now, we've got the frost at the pumpkin patches here, even a freeze warning in effect for portions of Virginia. And look at the frost advisory all the way down into the Raleigh-Durham area with these temperatures in the lower 30s this morning. You've got the 40s for the most part from the Mohawk Valley down the Hudson Valley towards New York City. But Saranac Lake, typically one of those colder spots, right? That high valley in the Adirondacks at 31 degrees. You've got the upper 20s in Berlin, New Hampshire. Then we head down toward the I-81 corridor, where we do see the 30s for you around Roanoke and Radford, down to Asheville and western North Carolina. Temperatures are in the mid to upper 30s. We're rebounding nicely, courtesy of sunshine. You will see that warm up. As you can see, Pittsburgh getting up to 73. New York City, that's more like it, right? We should be in the low to mid 60s for this time of the year. Still holding on to a little cool weather way up there in Caribou, Maine with 53, but elsewhere it is all about the 70s, even low 80s on the map for today. And you can see across the south, especially the mid-Mississippi Valley, those temperatures are going to be a little too warm. In fact, record-breaking for some of you. The strong high pressure that's been giving us the hot records in Texas and the Southwest, it is actually going to expand and move toward the east, and that's going to allow for a lot more towns and cities in the east to achieve these above average temperatures. So you can see on the maps tomorrow, even into Thursday, 222 million of us will be above average, and yes, a lot of us above that 80-degree mark as well, which is pretty late in the season, even for a place like Atlanta, where it's going to be 79 on Thursday, but then reaching 80 degrees by Friday. So always check the back seat of the car if you're going to be driving around, especially now we've got this warm up on the way. You never want to leave anybody. A soggy stretch on tap for the central U.S., bringing much needed rain to parts of the southern plains. But the bad news is it's also bringing the risk for flash flooding along with those thunderstorms. Farther north, it is the tale of two seasons. If you're not going to be seeing drenching rain, how about some snow? Maybe even 1 to 2 feet of it in the northern tier. Time to break out the shovels and get that winter car kit ready to go. We'll have some tips on how to stay safe on the roads just ahead. Plus, super fog leads to a deadly crash here in Louisiana. We'll have a look at the devastating aftermath and the current conditions as you hit the roads this morning. This is America's Morning Headquarters on this Tuesday. I'm meteorologist Kelly Cass alongside meteorologist Jordan Steele and Stephanie Abrams. Steph, we saw a bit of severe weather yesterday, mainly hail reports, and we could do it all over again
today. We could, because we have...
Watch out for also the thick fog. New Orleans once again waking up to a dense fog advisory for the second straight day. Northbound lanes of Interstate 55 west of the city remains closed after a foggy pileup involving more than 150 cars and trucks. At least 7 people have been killed. New this morning, first responders are concerned they could find additional bodies as they work their way through the mangled wreckage. Oh, just an awful situation. Exceptional drought conditions in southern Louisiana, a big factor leading into that swamp fire. And because of the fog, some New Orleans schools will delay class start times this morning. New Orleans down 26.5 inches for the year. So it was a very hot, dry summer. In fact, yesterday when the sun did come back out, we tied a record in New Orleans, getting all the way up to 87 degrees. All right, there is a look at, of course, the fog, the thick fog. It was on the map yesterday. This is a replay of when it was the worst. We're talking about about 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, that fog really built up, reducing visibility to not just a quarter mile, but down to 0 in some areas on the south end of Lake Pontchartrain. And yes, it was just devastating, especially crossing over that body of water where you had more moisture to work with. So you were driving along and you're basically hitting that wall of fog, reducing visibility greatly. And also when that smoke and fog mix together, that's what we call super fog. And it's that organic material that was involved in that fire. So when we talk about foggy accidents every year, it claims way too many lives. We have 25,000 crashes, more than almost 9,000 injuries actually, and more than 460 deaths per year blamed on the foggy conditions. And this is the time of year when we typically get the fog with that warm ground, warm bodies of water, and the air cooling down this time of the year, reaching that saturation point. Now, I-55 still closed at I-10 just around the Laplace area, so you're going to have to use an alternate route. Obviously, this morning, we're still going to have the dense fog in some areas with another dense fog advisory in effect for all those yellow and parishes there. And you can see what the visibility is like right now. Actually, not too bad for the airport in New Orleans, but some other areas, Steph, it is like pea soup out there. It's very low.
It is. It definitely.
Time now for your Tuesday morning front lines, beginning in South America. Dense, Steph, we could see a little bit of flash flooding from that system ourselves.
That we could.
Where that visibility keeps going down with each hour. So let's have a look, first of all, at the parishes that are under a dense fog advisory. That does include Baton Rouge, down towards Houma, Louisiana, where visibility was 0 last hour. We've come up a little bit now, but you can see right around New Orleans, we're looking good. But some of these other pockets, that dark gray color, indicating where that visibility is a quarter mile or less. So be very careful. Even the southwestern side of Louisiana, it is patchy dense fog this morning. Maybe not as widespread, but it's still out there. So that means you need to use the low beams if you're traveling. Leave a little extra early. Give yourself plenty of time getting to your destination. And keep in mind, there are still sections of I-55 shut down from I-10 this morning. So just some driving tips. You could be driving along with good visibility and then you hit that wall of fog. So reduce your speed, put on the low beam so other people can see you as well, and also increase your distance and minimize your distractions. You do not want to be texting anyway, right when you're driving. Here's a look at that wet weather that's going on across the Red River Valley. Oklahoma City, it's raining right now. Dallas, it's a southerly wind. It's cloudy this morning. The severe chances are going to be right here in southern New Mexico, western Texas, where we could have some gusty winds and hail. Oklahoma City, just some wet roads for you as we progress through the day. Even lunchtime, we could hear a rumble of thunder. Your evening rush, pretty much more of the same. But Jordan, we do need the rain in the southern plains.
Yes, we do.
Hail mixed in with that heavy rain. Otherwise, it's going to be another one of those days. It is a transitional time of year, so we can't rule out severe storms with this potent system moving across. We've got the moisture, the leftovers from Norma, that tropical system in the East Pack. That's going to be feeding into the system as well and add to that flood threat that Steph was just talking about. Today's severe threat, similar to where we saw it yesterday. You could see some hail reports coming out of Minneapolis, Wausau, Green Bay, over towards Traverse City in Michigan. The thing is, we do need the rain in many of these areas, but unfortunately, there could be a severe warning or two. You've got Omaha, Lincoln, Nebraska, on over towards Des Moines, sections of that I-35 corridor where we could see some hail mixed in with the rain. A lot of the moisture content on our water vapor imagery showing up right here over Wisconsin. That is where the heaviest rain and the frequent lightning has been so far this morning. Kind of a rude awakening for you if that woke you up before the alarm clock. You can see those storms crossing over Lake Michigan right now. Keep an eye on the wet weather down here across the central and southern plains. That is actually going to be moving northward throughout the day. You see the cloud shield over Kansas City late this morning, and then eventually the rain comes into the plaza as we head towards lunchtime around the Arch in St. Louis. All the while to the north, you've got Minneapolis getting blasted by storms between 3 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Any one of these storms could have a flood warning on it or even a severe warning as we watch it traverse the Great Lakes through late tonight. Notice how these storms are still showing some strength even after the sun goes down. So keep in mind there will be that possibility of flood even where you do have drought conditions because the ground just can't absorb it all at once. So it's possible in this darker shade of green, especially where we could see that flooding, including Green Bay, Wisconsin, and then even tomorrow into Thursday morning. Saturated ground, especially after today's rain. That could lead to the problems. We'll have to watch for training of showers and thunderstorms. Rainfall rates all have to be watched as we head from Thursday into Friday because the same area is going to be dealing with that potential for flash flooding. Let's start the clock on your Wednesday morning. We got the rain in Chicago. Could there be a delay at O'Hare Midway? That's possible. You see the wet weather along the I-35 corridor by tomorrow night between Minneapolis, Des Moines, Kansas City. Heavy rain blasting the Great Lakes as we head through Thursday, even Friday. These showers have some staying power here. Chicago getting wet by your Friday night plans, and it's going to add up 3 to 5 5 inches in some areas. So, Jordan, while we do need the rain, some of us, could get a flood warning or two.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, too, to see the snow just to their west because they're like, oh, man.
Yeah,
we don't
Minneapolis, our temperatures crash by
right
the weekend
behind
into the 30s.
After the moisture goes away because we know we can get the...
Good Tuesday morning. Let's go traveling. So far, I just checked the airports. We are not looking at any delays quite yet, but that could change, obviously, with the weather that's going on. Let's start in Louisiana, where we have dense fog advisories through 10 o'clock this morning local time. All these counties, all these parishes, I should say, in Louisiana under a dense fog advisory, including New Orleans. But at the airport, the visibility has not been so bad, around 10 miles or so. But places like Houma, Louisiana, Gonzales, we have seen some thicker fog, but certainly not as bad or as widespread as it was yesterday morning when we had that terrible accident. Check on the conditions on I-55 for closures. I believe they're still closed this morning. There's a look at that fog. Could be some patchy dense fog in eastern Texas as well. So again, sections of I-10 all the way up to I-20 even. You could be driving along with clear, good conditions, and then all of a sudden you come across very, very thick fog. So make sure the low beams are on as you head out and just give yourself a little extra time and extra space between you and the vehicle in front of you. Here's a look at the Midwest, where we do have some very heavy rain. Lots of lightning, too, going on. These storms moving into Green Bay as we speak. Nothing severe about these storms, but that could change. We do have a marginal threat for severe weather today across Minnesota, Wisconsin, northern Michigan as well. That stretch of the I-35 corridor also looking very wet, and with the leaves coming down, making it very, very slippery as well. Guys, over to you.
Well, driving in winter weather.
For that holiday. All right, let's get you out the door in the southeast, where we are looking a bit chilly. Situation here, we do have the frost advisories in the blue showing up anywhere from the lower Hudson Valley, Connecticut River Valley, even down to Raleigh, North Carolina. A bit of a frosty start, especially outside of the cities. It might be a little colder. You've even got a freeze warning for a section of northern Michigan, or northern Virginia, I should say. So let's check on the temperatures. We are just above the freezing mark now at Saranac Lake, 33 there. It is chilly in Berlin, New Hampshire, down to 29 degrees this morning. Some of you here have already had your first freeze of the season. Places like New York City, Philly, D.C., we have not quite yet. So that's why you're going to see these frost advisories coming up every now and then. Mid-30s for Charleston, West Virginia. There's Raleigh with that 39, 37 degrees in Asheville this morning. And yes, it's even chilly down into South Carolina. Temperatures are actually rebounding quite nicely. It's not going to be as chilly as it was yesterday, especially here in New York City. We're back to normal, right around 65 degrees. Still sweater weather, though. Saranac Lake up towards Caribou, temperatures running a little bit below average. But the Mississippi Valley, this is where we're going to possibly tie or break records. We did yesterday. We tied a record in New Orleans, getting up to 87 degrees after that fog dissipated. It was all about that sunshine, the very warm temperatures, and that will be the case again today. Ridge of high pressure moving a little bit more toward the east. That's going to spread out the heat. It's going to spread the love all the way into the northeast. That's where those temperatures are going above average for a change. So this is your maps to show you how many millions of us are above average today, tomorrow. Really not seeing a whole lot of cold air except for Montana and the Dakotas, where we're getting ready for that snowstorm, and even by Thursday. It's all about the eastern half of the country where we're still going to be feeling these above average temperatures. Here's a look at Thursday. You can see it very hot out there, even Atlanta getting up to 80. And typically we're done with 80s for this time of the year. So that's why we would just want to remind you guys to always check the back seat before. A soggy stretch on tap for the central U.S. And while it is bringing some much needed rain, unfortunately, the bad news is it's also bringing that risk for flash flooding along with it. Farther to the north, it is the tale of two seasons, whether you're in for drenching rain or possibly you're getting a lot of snow. How about 1 to 2 feet of it? Time to break out the shovels and get that winter car kit ready. We'll give you some tips on how to stay safe on the roads just ahead. Plus, super fog unfortunately leads to this deadly crash in Louisiana. We'll have a look at the devastating aftermath and the current conditions as you hit the roads this morning. You're watching America's Morning Headquarters. Thanks for joining us. I'm meteorologist Kelly Cass alongside meteorologist Jordan Steele and Stephanie Abrams. Some of the storms in the Midwest packing a punch. Take a listen. Storms, watch out for the fog. Yet again, New Orleans waking up to a dense fog advisory for the second straight day. Northbound lanes of Interstate 55 west of the city remains closed after a foggy pileup involving more than 150 cars and trucks. At least 7 people have been killed. New this morning, first responders are concerned they could find additional bodies as they work their way through the mangled wreckage. Exceptional drought in South Louisiana, a big factor feeding into that swamp fire. And because of the fog, some New Orleans schools will delay the start of class this morning. So, and once that fog went away, we saw a very hot day in New Orleans, tying a record at 87 degrees. That's really been the other story, just how hot and dry it has been all summer long. We're down 26.5 inches for the year, by the way. But this is a look at what it looked like from space. Our visible satellite imagery showing that thick fog forming right over the I-55 and I-10 corridors, and the visibility was at its worst between 7, 8, and 9 o'clock yesterday morning, and we got down to 0 at times, not just quarter mile, which is bad enough, but even all the way down to 0, which means you can barely see right in front of you. In fact, as the travelers just talked about, you were just driving along with okay conditions until you hit that wall of fog. That's why it's so important to have the low beams on. And of course, we talked about what that super fog is, with the smoke and the fog kind of mixed together, and that marsh fire is still burning, so there still could be some issues going forward. Fog leads to a lot of crashes every year. On average, 25,000 crashes, leading to nearly 9,000 injuries and even over 460 deaths each year due to fog. And this is the time of year when we typically see more of that fog, with the ground being so warm, bodies of water still pretty warm, holding on to their summer warmth, and then you have that cool air above it and helping that air reach the saturation point. So I-55 northbound remains closed in I-10, not too far from La Plaza, so you're going to have to take that alternate route. Give yourself a little extra time. Thankfully, the visibilities are not as bad as what we saw yesterday morning, but Steph, is still pretty thick in some areas right there in the dark.
Yeah, and it's going to keep lifting as
Tuesday morning front lines begin in South America, dense in our country, where we could see some flooding up and down from the southern plains into the upper Midwest, Steph.
well, the parched southern
Full out there, use a lot of caution. We still have road closure, I-55 north of I-10, so that's going to be an issue for you. Still dense fog advisory, including New Orleans, although the airport visibility not so bad this morning. We're about 10 miles, but you can see other areas, especially west of Lake Pontchartrain, where that visibility has dropped off even more. Very, very thick fog. Even back into eastern Texas, would not be surprised if you ran into some thick fog there as well. So use the low beams. These advisories are there for a reason, to advise you to go slower in these kinds of conditions. So reduce the speed. Low beams the way to go. If you put on the brights, you're just reflecting all that light right back in your face, right? Include also following your distance. Make sure you keep a good distance from the cars in front of you. Here's a look at that rain that's still happening, especially right across the Red River Valley, Oklahoma City. Moderate rain, temperatures in the mid-60s. You've got clouds for now in Dallas, but look at that. Little lightning strike starting to fire up there. Storms are just now developing in that moist tropical air in southern Texas. So watch out in this area of West Texas, southern New Mexico, where some of these storms could be on the stronger side. So we could have some severe weather, including some hail. Flash flooding is also going to be a possibility even when you have a drought situation. Sometimes that water is just too much for the soil to take, so we're going to have to watch out for that. Oklahoma City, a wet and stormy day ahead. Temperatures in the mid to upper 60s. Not a whole lot of sunshine out there, I'll say that. You've got clouds all day long. Even your evening rush hour looks pretty wet, pretty stormy, with those highs right around 70 degrees. But Jordan, once again, we do need the rain here.
You know what? And
Flood, we could see some severe weather breaking out yet again. We saw a lot of reports of 1-inch hail yesterday. That's just about the size of quarters. Today, so far, we have seen some thunderstorms, but sub-severe so far. We'll be tapping that tropical moisture, as Steph just talked about, what was Norma, moving all that moisture into the southern plains and riding all the way up ahead of a system into the Midwest. So we got the severe threat again today from the Twin Cities to Green Bay, Wisconsin, all the way over into Traverse City, where we could see some strong winds and some hail. And then tomorrow, it's still possible. Eastern parts of Nebraska into southern Iowa. You've got that stretch of I-35 south of Des Moines, where we could see some rough weather conditions for sure. All that moisture showing up rather nicely here on our water vapor. You see the green, even the white. That's moisture enough, right? But it has been pouring over northern Wisconsin this morning. Lots and lots of lightning, too. So quite the energetic system that's moving across the Dora Peninsula, now moving right over Lake Michigan and moving towards Traverse City. We'll have to watch these showers to the south. They're going to be moving northward as we progress through the day, reaching into places like Kansas City by midday. St. Louis, a few showers for you as well. Look at Minneapolis. By 1 o'clock this afternoon, we see another round of storms headed across here. St. Paul, also Rochester, Minnesota, heading over towards Rhinelander, Wisconsin. Green Bay, we get hit again with more storms as we head toward the evening time frame. Any one of these storms could be severe. Also with the flooding, a lot of leaves are coming down this time of the year. Make sure your gutters, your storm drains are cleared out and ready to take on the water, because that can also cause some problems this time of the year, along with the wet leaves being very slippery. Now for tomorrow, it's still possible. We see flooding this area in green from Minnesota all the way up into the western UP UP of Michigan. And still, with a lot of moisture in play, the system not moving a whole lot, there's still going to be that threat for flooding again as we go Thursday into Friday morning. So here's a look at the way it plays out Wednesday. You see a few showers here and there. Chicago, we could see a few isolated delays. Kansas City, it's going to be late at night. Tomorrow night, we see the storms moving up toward Des Moines by 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday. Showers, thunderstorms throughout the Great Lakes region. Notice the green just breaks up here and there, but it's overall going to be with us all the way into Friday. And then after that, you are going to see a noticeable temperature drop. We're talking about 30s for Minneapolis as we head toward the weekend, Jordan. So we need to talk more about that cold air coming in behind the system.
Yeah, for Halloween.
Yeah, just in time, right?
Oh, my goodness.
Tuesday, a week from today, right?
Yeah, it's a week from today.
Good Tuesday morning. Welcome back. Let's get traveling across the country. So far, no delays, at least related to the weather. That could change. Obviously, we get more volume through the airports. We're going to have to watch the conditions, especially here in Louisiana, where we do have dense fog advisories in effect. Just like yesterday morning, all these parishes in the yellow. It does include New Orleans, although the visibility at the airport hasn't been so bad this morning. We're still right at around 10 miles, but you'll notice just west of Lake Pontchartrain, that's where the visibility has dipped down to about a quarter mile in places like Gonzales. Patchy fog all the way into the western side or eastern side of Texas, also southern Mississippi. So watch that ride through the fog. Make sure you've got your low beams on as you head out and give yourself plenty of extra time and space between your car and the front and the one in front of you. Thunderstorms, they have been booming this morning out of northern Wisconsin, now storming in Green Bay, moving into parts of lower Michigan as well. We have a lot of moisture, so that means we're going to see the possibility of some heavy rain causing flooding, but also severe weather. We saw a lot of hail reports yesterday. We could do that again today. So for Minneapolis this morning, not so bad to start your ride, but by midday and even your evening commute, that's when we'll see more of those showers and thunderstorms really filling up. All right, guys, over to you.
Well, driving
Open by Thanksgiving and, of course, Christmas not too far after that. Let's get you out the door in the southeast. It always seems like the weekends is when we get all of our clouds and the rain. For now, we're starting off with the clear skies and good radiational cooling, and that has allowed some of the frost to form out there. In the blue, that's where we have frost advisories, even a freeze warning for a section of central Virginia with a little bit of higher elevation and colder temperatures this morning. So right now, we're starting off below freezing in Berlin, New Hampshire, as well as Caribou in Maine. Out on Long Island, probably the east end of Long Island, a little bit cooler this morning than the city is showing us right now. In the city, it is 50 degrees. But if we take a look at Long Island, we do see a little bit of patchy frost out there. So yes, even some of those outlying areas outside like snow. So let's have a look at those temperatures elsewhere. You see the Northeast, but also down toward the Mid-Atlantic. There's that 47 DC. Colder though, especially across the higher elevations of the Shenandoah, back into the mountains of West Virginia, where we have those starts in the mid-30s. But rebounding very nicely by later on today. Lots of 70s on the map here. Even New York City, that 65 degrees is right around where we should be for this time of the year. This is not where we should be for this time of the year. It's going to be another hot day. Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, flirting with records. So even New Orleans, we saw 87 degrees yesterday, and that was enough to tie the record. So that ridge of high pressure dominating the weather pattern, not just in the middle, but now sliding to the east. So now you got the Northeast that will be dealing with these above average temperatures, especially by the time we get toward the end of the week. Millions of us above average today, tomorrow, and then again by Friday. Hardly anybody below average except for the west, where of course we're going to talk about that snow. But here's a look at your Thursday highs. 82 in Nashville. Typically by this time of the year, we are done with the 80-degree weather. Atlanta 79 Thursday, but then by Friday, even here, we'll get up to that 80-degree mark. So just a reminder, we've had way too many